driving down Jackson Highway many, many times, screaming out to God, why my baby? And she was such a part of our life. Mm-hmm. And she was loved by so many people, and we couldn't understand why God chose this time of her life. What kept resonating with me is a quote from Corrie ten Boom that says, there is no pit so deep that God's love is not deeper still.
So I asked a lot of questions to God about why so close and yet so far, why I made a pledge that I would, protect my daughter, my whole family, my whole life, and I took great pride in being there, being present, being available, saving the day. And in that moment, I wanted to know, God, why was I not allowed the opportunity or afforded the opportunity to step in and save my daughter? And I think my anger was stemming from feeling out of control. And I wondered if I was out of control, why he was not in control. The circumstances just didn't make any sense to me. And I was crying out to God, and I didn't really understand why. And then I also didn't understand what I was supposed to do now, how I was supposed to behave. I felt like a failure as a father. And I voiced that to him. But in that moment, in that deep despair, in that moment, I got no answer back from God at that time. And so I just had to stay in that moment for a season. I really think there was a spiritual battle going on, and I feel like it was sort of like a wilderness experience. And I didn't understand why I had to suffer in that way until the other side of the experience. And I realized that what was happening was my faith was being tested, and it was being refined. And I was seeing a deeper side of trust with God that I never thought possible. And I know that had I not gone through this suffering, I would have never gotten there. I remember to this day, at the viewing, which I never imagined doing, would sit down after viewing her repeatedly. 2 or 3 times I did this, and on the 3rd time I sat down, I didn't think I'd get back up again to go back and look at her again. And it was in that moment that I was just sort of in my spirit crying out to God, and I felt him rush in that moment, in that deep place, and say to me, I'm here. I've got you, and I'm here to show you that I'm here, but I'm going to put you right back where you've been, because you're going through something and you're going to be okay. I'm going to be with you through it. And as quickly as that moment of that rush of the pain went away for a split second or two, I felt normal. And then all of a sudden the pain came back, the tears came back, the sorrow came back, the despair came back. But in reality, I knew in that moment that was all I needed. That was all I needed, as though God knew that even though I was suffering tremendously, that he wanted to show me he was there.
My immediate thoughts and feelings towards God were he was all I had at that point. I was at the end of myself. I was in the deepest pit throughout the grieving process, and even now, 3.5 years later, just how loving and kind and gracious he is, even in the midst of that pain and suffering. God is building in us a testimony for people to be able to reach out and to be, here we have our own story. And
the Lord brings all these
people, they just are coming to us, people that have lost children, or not even children, just people who have had loss. And what has transpired over the last few years is these we've been able to minister to these people, bring food to these people, share our stories. But it's almost like when you reach out beyond your own pain and reach out to other people, that's how God strengthens you. He strengthens you through service and helping other people. You have to go through grief. You can't go around it, go over it. You have to actually go through grief. But if you can walk through that grief with a hope that, that you have, and you share it with other people. You're coming alongside of them, and you're strengthening them, and it's kind of a ripple effect. And we never thought that this would be like a ministry we would ever be involved in.
No, we wouldn't choose it. That's for sure.
Never would choose this, but yet.
Well, another way of saying it too would be just simply that we would have never imagined God would get so much glory through such a terrible circumstance.
Right.
And yet, by the way He's working in us and working through us, He's getting greater and greater glory, which is our desire as believers. We want God to be glorified. We just never saw it being possible this way. But He is. It's His eternal plan. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think suffering is the greatest gift from a loving and merciful God that we can get from Him, because it's in that our faith is refined, that our hope is renewed and it's brightened. The clarity with which I see hope now would have never occurred without the suffering I've gone through. And it's like He waits till just the right moment, and then He comes flooding in, and the reassurance is so much sweeter than it would have ever been if you just had a quarter of that experience. We don't want the experience, but what we get from it is powerful. It's just...
I've thought of that question a lot too. Like, what would I say to God when I see Him face to face? I think it's going to be just a joyous reunion. Yeah. I don't think I'll have any questions because I know He's sovereign and He's in control and not me.